Welcome back to Vuln Vibes. In this episode, we are going to talk about the Triofox vulnerability. Today, we're doing a deep dive into, well, a pretty nasty end-day exploit we've seen hitting the wire. It's CVE-2025-12480.
That's the one, in Gladinet's Triofox file sharing platform.
Right, and what's really caught our eye is how it's being weaponized. We're talking CVSS 9.1, critical stuff.
Absolutely critical, but the score almost undersells the ingenuity here.
Yeah, the execution vectors is something else. Mandiant's tracking this cluster, UNC is 6485, and they're getting remote code execution, RCE, by hijacking a completely standard, seemingly benign feature.
The antivirus configuration, it's quite the trick.
Exactly. It's a textbook case of feature abuse, something I think every security architect really needs to, wrap their head around.
It's definitely a devastating chain, and the timeline makes it even worse. But let's maybe start with the flaw itself.
Right.
CVE 2025-12480.
Okay, lay it out for us. What's the core mechanism?
So fundamentally, it's an authentication bypass. Critically, it lets an unauthenticated attacker just, sidestep the login.
Straight past the front door.
Pretty much. Gets them access to the core configuration pages, and for something like Triofox, enterprise file sharing, getting to config unauthenticated.
Yeah, that's game over right there. All the preconditions for RCE are basically met.
Exactly. And the truly unforgivable part here, as you hinted, is the end day status.
Right. Mandiant saw this starting when?
August
24th, 2025. That's when they confirmed active exploitation by UNC 6485.
And the patch.
Gladinet had already released it. Version 16.7.10368.56560 came out almost a month earlier.
Ouch. So this is purely down to, failed patch management, just leaving the door wide open.
It highlights a huge gap, yeah. If you're running this and haven't patched, you're basically running the gauntlet against a known active threat.
And this isn't exactly a one-off for Triofox this year, is it? The risk profile feels like it's been climbing.
That's a really key piece of context.
Yeah.
We absolutely cannot overlook it. This flaw, 12480, it's the third Triofox vulnerability we've seen actively exploited in 2025.
Third. Wow. Which are the others? We already saw fallout from CVE 2025-30406 and CVE 2025-11371 earlier in the year.
So when you see a pattern like that, multiple high-severity, actively exploited flaws on the same platform.
It just screams attack surface risk, doesn't it? It really demands a serious reevaluation of, how and where you're deploying this thing.
Okay, let's get into the attack chain itself then, because this is where UNC 6485 really showed their operational savvy. It's a two-stage thing, right?
Okay.
Stage one, turn that auth bypass into persistent admin access. How did they manage that without any creds to start with?
They found a weakness in the application's sort of deployment lifecycle design.
Oh.
By using that auth bypass, they could basically trigger the setup routine again, or trick the system into running it.
Even though the system was already fully set up and running.
Exactly. Normally, those setup pages get locked down tight after the initial configuration. That's the intended security.
They bypass that mechanism.
Right. And then they just use the setup flow itself to perform what looks like, a completely legitimate initial admin configuration.
Clever. So they're not trying to crash it initially. What was the immediate goal there?
Persistence. Plain and simple. They use that setup process to create a brand new native Triofox admin account.
And they give it a name.
Yeah, something deliberately innocuous. Cluster admin. Just blends right in.
Right. So now they can step away from the noisy auth bypass exploit.
And they have a reliable internal credential. High privileges. Ready for all the follow-on activity.
Okay, so cluster admin becomes the pivot point. They've gone from anonymous outsider to effectively a trusted insider.
Precisely.
Which brings us neatly to stage two, the main event.
Yeah.
Getting that remote code execution. What feature did they actually weaponize once they logged in as cluster admin?
And this is the part that's really elegant in a disturbing way. They didn't need another exploit, like a memory corruption bug or anything fancy.
Yeah.
No, they went straight for that built-in antivirus configuration feature we mentioned earlier.
The AV scanner config. How does that normally work?
Well, think about it. An admin needs to tell Triofox where the local AV scanner executable is located, right? So you provide a path.
Okay, and Triofox runs it periodically, I assume.
Exactly. It kicks off that executable to scan files.
But that feature design relies entirely on trust, doesn't it? It assumes the admin is pointing it to a legitimate AV engine.
That's the crux of it. The configuration input lets the user provide an arbitrary path. There wasn't enough validation.
Okay. I see where this is going.
So UNC 6485 just uploaded their own malicious file first, a simple bat script, actually, called centerreport.bat,
Uploaded it where?
to a directory the Triofox server process could access. Then they logged in as cluster admin, went to the AV config page.
And just pointed the scanner path directly to their centerreport.bat script.
Bingo! And the execution context is absolutely critical here.
Why is that?
Because the main Triofox parent process needs high privileges to run its services, right? It needs to manage files, network access, all that.
Sure. Often runs a system or a highly privileged service account.
Exactly. So when Triofox launches the configured AV scanner, that script, senderreport.bat, inherits those privileges.
Meaning it executes
It's
as.
just system. Full system compromise. It's just textbook configuration abuse leading straight to a system shell. No complex exploit needed.
Wow. Okay, so they've got system RCE via this batch script. Moving into post-exploitation, what was UNC 6485 focused on immediately? What did that script actually do?
The first order of business was setting up reliable, resilient command and control.
Yeah,
C2.
makes sense.
So the centerreport.bat script's immediate job was just to download an installer package, specifically for Zoho Unified Endpoint Management System, or UEMS.
Zoho UMS, okay, like a legit MDM or RMM tool.
Yep. And they pulled this installer directly from a hard-coded IP, 84.200.80.252.
So the batch script was just a dropper, effectively. UMS wasn't the final payload.
No, UMS was the delivery mechanism. They used that installer to deploy commercial legitimate remote access programs, RATs basically. Specifically, Zoho Assist, part of the UEMS suite, and also AnyDesk.
Ah, using legit remote support tools for C2. Standard TTP these days.
Very standard. It massively lowers the chance of detection compared to custom malware, right? All that network traffic just looks like normal remote support, blends right in.
Okay, so they've got stable remote access now via Zoho Assist or AnyDesk. What do they do next? Pivot to lateral movement escalation.
Both. They immediately kicked off internal reconnaissance, got to map the environment, figure out where they landed.
Standard recon playbook.
Yep. Then they started messing with security boundaries. We saw them attempting to change passwords for existing user accounts.
Why? Lockout maybe? Or fallback persistence?
Could be either or both, but the real objective was crystal clear pretty quickly. They were making attempts to add accounts to the domain admins group.
Ah, the crown jewel. Going for full domain compromise?
Absolutely. Getting domain admin gives them, carte blanche across the entire network.
Oh.
Lateral movement, data exfil, long-term persistence, everything.
That focus on domain admin really tells you their ultimate goal. Okay, so beyond the privilege escalation, you mentioned C2 resilience. Did they stick with just Zoho and AnyDesk, or did they set up something more dedicated?
They didn't rely solely on the commercial RATs for their primary C2, no. That would still carry some risk.
Right, those tools can get flagged eventually.
Exactly. So they downloaded some specialized but readily available tunneling tools, specifically Plink and Putway.
Standard tools for SSH tunneling.
Yep. They used Plink likely to build a dedicated encrypted SSH tunnel straight back to their own C2 infrastructure.
So a separate, stable channel. Harder to link back to the initial Triofox compromise if you're just looking at network flows.
Precisely. Gives them that extra layer of stealth and stability.
And did they do anything clever with the network protocol for that tunnel to help it evade detection?
They did. This was particularly neat. They set up the SSH connection to run over TCP port 433.
433. Not the standard SSH port 22. Why 433?
Think about what usually runs on 443, HTTPS, right? Encrypted web traffic. Port 433 is non-standard but very close.
Okay.
So they're tunneling their internal RDP sessions, which they're using via Zoho AnyDesk or other means, through this SSH tunnel.
RDP over SSH.
And then running that SSH tunnel over port 433. The idea is to make the C2 traffic look like, or at least blend in with, standard encrypted web traffic.
Because most firewalls and network security stats will allow port 443 outbound and might not look too closely at 433, assuming it's just slightly misconfigured TLS or something similar.
Exactly. It lets their persistent C2 comms just sort of fade into the background noise of normal web activity. Maximum stealth for inbound RDP and outbound C2 data.
That is, yeah, that's a masterclass in blending in with the environment.
Okay.
So let's bring it back to the defenders. For the professionals listening, running Triofox, or maybe even just concerned about similar integrated platforms, what's the immediate action plan? The remediation checklist.
First things first, you absolutely have to patch. No excuses. Update Triofox to version 16.7.10368.56560 or anything newer.
And the release notes confirmed this version fixes the initial setup access issue.
Correct. The notes explicitly say it adds protection so those initial config pages can no longer be accessed after Triofox has been set up. That closes the front door they used.
Okay, patch is step one, but what about hunting? If you suspect you might have been hit before patching.
You need to do some forensic hunting, absolutely. Two main things to audit immediately.
Go on.
First, review all administrative accounts in Triofox, especially any created in the last few months. Look specifically for that default name they used, cluster admin.
Treat any account with that name or any recent unknown admin account as highly suspicious.
Assume it's compromised, isolate it, investigate it. Second, you have to audit the Triofox configuration file itself, the actual config on the server.
What are we looking for there?
Check the path that's configured for the antivirus scanner engine. If that path points to any script or binary that isn't your legitimate AV,
Especially if it points to centralreport.bat.
then you have confirmed exploitation. Game over, incident response time. And one more thing. Check your network logs. Look for recent outbound SSH connections using TCP port 433. That's a high-fidelity indicator of this specific threat actor's C2 setup. Might catch them even if they cleaned up the initial script.
Right. Patch, audit admins, audit AV, config path, check network logs for port 433 SSH.
Got it.
Zooming out a bit, the big technical lesson here isn't just about the auth bypass itself. It feels like it's more about that chain.
Absolutely. It's about chaining what might seem like lower severity issues or even just, configuration options.
Into total system compromise. And doing it by leveraging legitimate built-in enterprise features.
Precisely. That's the key insight for threat modeling, I think. You have to recognize that seemingly benign configuration options, especially in software that needs high privileges to run like anything running a system.
They can be turned against you. They become attack surface.
Exactly. We're seeing this pattern more and more. Attackers weaponizing trusted native functions to bypass controls that are looking for traditional malware signatures or exploit techniques.
So configuration validation needs the same rigor as checking for memory safety bugs or injection flaws.
You got it. Assume any user configurable path or setting, especially one acted upon by a privileged process, could be an execution vector.
The level of technical sophistication UNC 6485 showed here. Turning that auth bypass into domain admin targeting via such an unconventional RCE vector, that's a serious wake-up call.
It really is.
Which kind of leads us to that final, maybe uncomfortable thought for everyone listening. Considering this is the third end-day exploit actively used against this specific platform, Triofox, just this year.
Yeah.
How should security teams be revising their risk calculations? Not just for Triofox, but for any third-party integrated solution, especially file-sharing platforms that often need deep system integration and high privileges.
It's a tough question.
When does that demonstrated recurring pattern of vulnerability in a product's code base mean that its operational value, even if it's significant, simply no longer justifies the inherent security risk it brings onto your network? Where's that tipping point?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Definitely something to chew on as you review your own asset inventory and vendor risk assessments.
Indeed. Food for thought. That's all the time we have for this deep dive.
Thanks for tuning in.